All right, we are live. We've had a few issues this morning trying to get all four of us on, but we are here now. Today we're going to be talking about printing with Poly One Libra silicone inks. A couple of weeks ago, we did just kind of a printing 101 with silicones, but we're going to take it to the next level with a couple of cool dudes that we've been working with recently. We've got Josh Bartolomeo, is that right?
Bartolomeo. Close
Bartolomeo
enough.
from Detailed Custom Apparel, and we've got Brendan Wilson from Griffin House up in Vancouver. We've been working with both these guys for probably about 6 months on this new Libra Silicone Inks program, and so we thought we'd have them on and just kind of go through some of the trials and tribulations that they've had with Libra Silicone Inks. Joining me is John Magee, another tech service guy for Poly One Silicone Inks. So we're just gonna jump into a few questions and answers, and everybody watching, please join us and give us some of your questions and feedback. So, first question that I'm gonna ask: what are some of the reasons you began working with silicones in a relatively new ink technology when we compare it to water-based and plastol, and where does it fit into your offering? So, Josh, you want to take that first?
Yeah, sure. So I would say the reason I started working with it was I was just looking for something that just had a real a wow factor for my customers. You know, after working with Plastisol for so long, and then kind of working, my way into water-based inks. Um, you're always playing around with plastisol, different plastisol. What additives can you use to make to give it a better texture, to give it a softer hand? Um, and yeah, I mean, once I always knew that there was better options, but I could never find them. So I was really happy when I found Dan, when we connected, and you gave me the information on the silicone, because the texture, the hand, and the coverage of the ink is just. And I know you emphasize that this is not like, we're not advertising this ink right now, but
No, go
it
for
it
it.
it it's the best stuff, man. It's
Yeah.
and to, if anybody's watching that wasn't with us earlier, we mentioned. I said I really don't want any other printers to start using this, to keep smearing on the plastisol, and the customers who are looking for really good stuff, call me up.
Yeah, Detailed Custom Apparel, absolutely. And Josh, you're really looking to promote that high quality athletic apparel. Is that?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, we don't specialize in just athletic. We print everything,
Yeah.
but the athletics and the team sports and the jerseys and everything is, the majority of our customers, and we just like to, give a product that, like I said, my thing is I want my customers to be blown away when they see the product and say, "Wow, I've never seen a print look like that before."
Yeah, and Brendan, kind of a contrast, along the same lines. You guys do a lot of printing for folks like Lululemon and then local customers. Why silicones for you guys?
Well, it really kind of filled a need for us. We have, like you said, a lot of clients like Lululemon, but our tagline is screen printing and sportswear. So over the past like 25 years, we've gotten a lot of developed a large clientele of people that are looking for athletic solutions. So like bathing suits, hockey sweaters, and of course the little stretchy black pants. And like you were showing in the video, the silicone kind of solves that problem for us. I mean, over the years, we've gotten away with, and kind of screen printing has gotten away with, what Josh was talking about taking plastisols and just adding additives to it, or things to it to kind of Frankenstein yourself a solution. And when you're doing stuff for Lululemon and larger companies, you're doing thousands of units, you need something that's going to be consistent from the first print to the last, and then be reproducible 6 months from now from someone else. And for that you need like hard science, and that's where silicone comes in and really kind of wraps that up and gives us all a peace of mind in the shop.
Yeah, and this is one print that, especially for what you're talking about here. This is a 110 and then just a 160 overprint. You get all the stretch that you need out of it,
Oh yeah.
and this fabric here bleeds like crazy. And you can see, just a really nice bright white finish, blocking that dye sublimation and the low cure temperatures of 260. We've taken it down to 250 degrees. So just a real low cure temperature that really fits in well with some of these dye sublimated goods that you see on yoga pants and such. So I think John.
Yeah, coming back on here. Hey, Brendan, I was going to ask you, in Griffin House, how would you compare the difference between going from plastol and water-based to silicone?
It's like we're all looking for that holy grail ink, right? That like when I walked into a shop 20 years ago, I figured there was something that could just do everything. And there isn't, but silicone is like at the doorstep for me in terms of that like holy grail. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, how can I describe what it's like to print with silicone? And it reminds me of the first time I walked into a shop 20 years ago and I saw someone pulling a squeegee and I thought to myself like, oh, that's so easy. Look at that. That's effortless. And then he's like, yeah, why don't you give it a try? Excuse me. And I went up and I grabbed the squeegee and like I pulled it and it was hard and it didn't go through right and it was uneven and thick and it was just terrible. And then I got silicone and it honestly makes screen printing as easy as I thought it was 20 years ago.
That's a good point. I mean, it does look like what you think screen printing is going to look like the first time you do it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
John, I
just so
remember
smooth and easy to work with.
when we were in your shop and you were printing manual. You and I can't remember the guy you were printing with, but I could just see your muscles flex and you're pushing it
Oh
like
yeah,
a
man.
chainsaw. I'm
It's
like,
that muscle
whoa,
memory, right? Especially with
yeah, just
white, you just think it's going to be.
right,
And
and that's
especially if you
where
have like an
this.
LX screen that's just going to release it real nice. I mean, we're doing stuff on Lululemon black stretchy pants with one hit, and it's white, it stretches, everything works. It's like it's
So,
perfect.
what do you think some of the tips of that are? I mean, I would assume a thick stencil gasket is going to be a big help there. But what have you
Yeah,
found has helped you since we left?
off contact, a big inkwell, and then just remembering like because we don't do all silicone. Obviously, there's water based, there's plastisol, and you now have to kind of be remember what you're going into, right? So if you're switching from a poly ink over to a silicone, you just got to remember that like it's just a kiss. It's not you're not forcing it through. It's just a kiss, and then of course like your ink count or your mesh counts and stuff. All of that's got to jive. But once you get that right, man, it's a breeze.
Yeah, and I think the big thing there is that we get with silicone, it's really there's chemistry behind it, and the adhesion that we get comes from a chemical adhesion, and so we don't have to really impregnate that fabric. So we just want to lay it on top, and boom, we get opacity
Yeah.
just by laying it on top and then getting that chemical adhesion.
So, Josh, for you, same thing. I mean, you've been doing a lot of sim process too that I've seen, right? Uh, Anything you would suggest there? Anything that you learned the hard way, or anything that might help people?
Using the Libra,
Yes, or silicone ink in general.
I would say I've experimented with a one other silicone brand before I started using the Libra, and I can say that the Libra, two things: it lasts, its open screen time is 10 times better than the other one, and it flashes quicker, it cures quicker. It's like that the window is so broad for the off brand
Yeah.
where it's going to give you trouble. And I feel like the Libra is really so narrow. Like you have really so much more time to leave it in the screen. And of course, you got to do things like if you're printing manually, you do want to do as much as you can to keep that screen away from the heat. I mean, but these are just simple things that I guess you should be doing anyways, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
is
no,
it
that's right. I mean, we try to tell everybody, when you do stop, I try to teach silicone somewhere in between plastisol and water based. Like, it's going to last longer open than a water based, but not, nothing like a plastisol. So when you're running an auto, make sure if you stop to register or take a break, either flood up your screen or even better, clean the image area just using regular plastisol based solvents, and then half index that hot palette. I can't tell you how much that helps, because especially like John introed this sim process, especially when you're doing that, when you have a very fine deposit of ink in that screen, it's going to be more susceptible to curing. While we're talking about sim process, I know we had Michelle Moxley on the other day, and she showed this. We did this up at Latitudes with her, and we had 20 some screens set up, but it was a great one to just kind of play with. We actually printed this wet on wet, but we added a cooling screen, but it was really a curing station, because that fine layer of ink has time to cure from the heat of the palette, and not necessarily from a flash. So we went through so many different iterations with that. And here's another one that we did with a local artist, Derek DeYoung from Michigan. And we overcoated this. This one can be hard to tell. We've got rainy days here, so you may not be able to see it. But we overcoated this with a really glossy water drop effect, so that smallmouth has a bunch of gloss and shimmer to it, and that was really cool. And we really blended this color. We started dropping colors so that we could blend into that yellow and orange fade. So that was pretty cool.
So Dan, we got a question offline. Silicone wet on wet, is it more like water based? So how would you describe it? I mean, it's silicone behavior.
Yeah, so silicone has a tendency to pick up on the screen, and I'll take this back to one of Brendan's comments. It's not an end all. This is going to be a niche market, and in a lot of ways that's great for like what Josh is describing. It really gives me as a printer something that I can put a high value piece of apparel out there that's different and distinguished from my competition. But the two things that silicone struggles with that you have to kind of adjust your process in is fibrillation and then pickup. Just because of the polymers that are in it, it's a long chain. I won't get into chemistry, but it does tend to pick up wet on wet. Now with this one, we actually used that. We didn't flash everything, and we didn't have it cured so that we could run this. We didn't run production on this, but hey man, anybody wants to run production sim process wet on wet, call me. Let's go.
White T-shirt too.
White T-shirt too. Yeah, totally. Yeah, good observation. So, I mean, there are some things. When I talk about fibrillation, Josh and I were talking about this earlier. A lot of times, even with plastisol, when we're on manual press, we'll take an iron, or in an auto, we'll take a hot head and iron that surface down before we put any inks on it, and that helps. But it doesn't, with silicone, it doesn't completely cure it. With plastisol, it doesn't completely cure it. So what we will do on an auto press is we'll print a full underbase plate or white plate, and then come into a hothead. And actually, we go to a flash first, and it's not a full flash. So if I'm flashing normally 5 seconds for a full tack free, I'll do about 3.5, 4 seconds, and then I'll kiss it with the hothead, and then that finishes the cure while it's pushing the fibers down and into a sealed position. And then those are there forever, because this is a cross-link chemistry. It's a thermal setting. So once it's down, once those fibers are down, you print on top of it, and they're not going to come up, and they're not going to come up in wash dry cycles as well.
Yeah, Dan, something I'd like to add in case anybody's just joining in on this or is new to silicone. Plastisol, we're melting the ink. Water-based, we're evaporating the water out of it. Silicone is a cross-linking process, so that's your chemical additive. But maybe you can elaborate on that. And then also, when we first met, the first conversation we ever had was about silicone. I remember walking, upstairs at ISS talking about silicone. You explained to me that the polymer chain is kind of accordion-like, and that's why it stretches so well. Do you think there's any? Would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. I actually, to take your second question first, I have a simple way of describing silicone cure. I come from chemistry, so I used to try to teach chemistry in an ink bucket, and I've learned that is not the right thing. We're not screen printers because we loved chemistry in high school. So I now try to teach it as an ink, and if you need the chemistry, here it is. And here's the easiest thing to know about silicone. Let's say we're boiling a pot of spaghetti. We get our water boiling. We throw spaghetti into this. We cook it all. We pull it out, colander off the water and put it on a plate. If I take a fork through that immediately and move it, all of those spaghetti noodles move around separately really easily. Give it 5 minutes. Come back. Try that again, and what happens? That whole plate of spaghetti moves as one because everywhere that those noodles are touching, there's a starch bond that has formed. It's the same thing that happens in silicone cure or thermosetting. Is we're basically allowing the cross linkers to touch other polymers and then create this bond. Once that bond is formed, we take this and I'll go a little deeper into chemistry. We take this V-shaped bond and we can then stretch it out, but it recovers too. So when I pull on one of these, recovery is just as big. We can do this with cotton, and this has elastane in it, so the fabric itself comes back, but the silicone helps it recover because it wants to go back to its natural state of neutrality, basically, in that bond strength. John, what was your first question? I forget now. I got all chemistry.
No, you pretty much addressed it there. I mean, we were talking about the difference between melt and chemical bonds. So, I mean, that with a lot of people haven't heard the phrase cross-linking. I mean, pretty much, I feel like you explained it there.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Brandon, is there anything else I mean, I'm really curious because we've got two sides here where Josh has done a lot of cool sim process stuff, and then you guys were a really long established shop with a bunch of older behaviors that were great for plastisol, but taking on this new technology. Did you guys were really open to it more so than other shops? So what did you see as far as like pitfalls where you had to convince other printers to be more accepting of it, or did just some people become silicone printers and then the others just gravitate back towards plastisol?
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. There's kind of an old guard and a new guard in a lot of shops, and there's a lot of people that are like, why change it? It works. And they've got a point. And there's a lot of even some jobs that we're still doing, even the clients are like 50 cents more, it works. We're just going to go with it. Just leave it the same. But there always comes a time when you put a plastisol with some stretch in it onto a stretchy pair of pants, and it comes off, and it just doesn't work. And it's just about kind of training that old guard into knowing that this is and silicone. Like I've brought in other things into other shops in the past where I've been like, we got to try this. It's going to be great. And kind of the old guard is like, whatever, there's a razor thin margin of error in this process and it doesn't work. It doesn't fit into our shop and it's just a kerfuffle. But with silicone, it just works and it's really hard to deny. So you print it and throw it through the dryer. Our dryer it's actually set at like 510, but I think it's between like 310, something like that. And you hit that one margin and you could just throw it from the dryer into whoever's doubting its hands and give it a stretch. I've even taken buckets of ink, tied it onto the end of a shirt and just hung it from stairs just so it just stretches out, and it's just like that's why we do it. That's why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Send us
a
those photos.
little bit of a learning curve for them, but once they get, it's now their new process.
And especially with the yoga pants and all these stretch apparels, compression apparel, I mean, after 10 or 20 uses, you start to get cracking on some of these other technologies. So it's great for that. And we got a question online, low cure, how low can you go? The cure temperature is of addition cure silicone is 248 degrees. So can you cure it lower than that? Yeah, I have people that let it dry, air dry for like a really crystal clear water droplet effect, but you got to have space to do that. I mean, you can see that more in Asian flat table printing than you can, where we're just production. We want to stack and go, stack, pack, and go. But the cure temperature can go down as low as 250 degrees for 60 seconds. So when you're dealing with really bad sublimators or even very light apparel, we sell
Low
a lot of
quality
this that's
fabric.
right, and we're actually doing quite a bit of grip with it. And this one here we did at the show for exactly four like gloves, hospital socks, whatever. And this just has a better grip to it. It's a clear gel, but I put some pigment in there just to give it some effect. But that grip, and then for like ladies hosiery and stuff, where it's going to hold up that hosiery, that grip holds on. But that hosiery is so thin that if you hit that with 300 degrees or more, you're just going to burn that hosiery. So that's where silicones really fit into some of those low cure targets.
So, Brendan, you mentioned something that's pretty interesting. I'd like to see what Josh's answer to this would be on upselling or having to upsell. How do you approach your customers with silicone?
I don't give them a choice, man.
Yeah,
I honestly don't. I'm not. My company is not a huge company like Brendan's company. I kind of pick and choose who I want to work with, and I'm only printing silicone now. And if my customer has a problem with the price, they can go somewhere else.
so you're becoming an expert if you're there now. I'd imagine, right?
I
How long have you been
mean,
printing with silicone?
about a year.
Right
Yeah.
on.
No, and we'd love to see that. And it's one of those things. I mean, we've done some calculations. You're going to have between 20 and 30% waste with ink at the end of the day that you have to pull off the screen that you can't reuse. Yeah,
So
go.
I want to tell you guys about something that I saw in the Nike, one of the Nike flagship stores at the Grove in LA. They're doing a process. They're selling a dry fit hooded sweatshirt for like $180, and it has a swoosh print on the chest, and it looks like they are using now what the rep told me, the sales associate told me that it's recycled shoes in the print, but it's just pieces of like flat like silicone sheeting like snipped into little small pieces, and they screen print a clear coat, and then it's like sprinkled on, and then they screen print another clear coat on top of it. I started actually my silicone waste that I have catalyzed and I end up not using. I started putting it between two Teflon sheets and pressing it in the heat press and just making spare sheets. And I have campaigns open right now where we are selling these clear. I'm going to print the clear part A, and I have the little pieces of silicone extra that we just are going to shred up. We're just going to sprinkle it on, and it's just a cool effect.
Yeah, badass.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
On
idea.
that note, do you
I
ever
really like.
refrigerate your silicone once you've catalyzed it?
Say again?
So, on that note, do you ever refrigerate your silicone once it's catalyzed to extend it?
I have, and I will say this: the Libra, uh, and again, Dan, like I know you said you're not going to break into the ionic bonds and the
Do
chemistry
it.
of the whole process, but the competitor, I don't work for Poly One at all. But the brand that I was using of the silicone before the Libra ink, you were lucky if you could have it in the refrigerator for 8 hours. Once it was catalyzed, it was like the colors, darker colors might have lasted a little bit longer. But if you thought you were going to have catalyzed silicone that white or like yellow or orange and put it in the refrigerator, it was done after like 10 hours. I've had the Libra in the refrigerator, catalyzed white, refrigerated for like 2 to 3 days, and
Yeah.
it's fine. You know, I wasn't 100% sure if it had already started, like if it was going to cause problems by using it, but it was still had some, viscosity, and it was fine.
Well, and it's interesting. That's a good point. We say if you keep that container closed after you catalyze it, and just to take this back for people that aren't familiar with silicone, it's a catalyzed system. So it's kind of like discharge. We catalyze it, and then a timer starts ticking, and we've got to use it before it starts cross-linking. If you cap that and store it in a cool place, refrigerators are great for that. You're going to get 72 hours of usable time. We're looking at 8 hours of automatic screen open life. As long as you're feeding it like you would a water based, you don't need to put 3 pounds of material on there and then never put any more in. We want to card in and refresh that ink just like we would water based.
I will say this too, if I can.
Yeah.
The Libra ink, when you run it on an auto, the other silicones that I have used in the past tend to really ball up on the flood bar. The Libra ink does not ball up. It stays. It lets gravity pull it down.
Yeah.
It flows really nice.
Well, that was one of the things that I've learned in other developments with silicone. That there's a couple of things there, and you mentioned them all now. Making sure that this will, fall off that flood bar, roll off that flood bar, so we don't have to card it off. And then also the flash time. We've been able. Poly One Libra has the only full special effects and mixing system that I know of across the globe. And within each one of those products, it's super important that we have the same exact flash time, because if I'm going to do, an underbase clear for adhesion and then a white and then colors and then come across it with a matte clear for crock resistance or a gloss clear for effect, I'm not changing my flash time, right? So I want everything to flash at 4 seconds or 3.5 seconds when I get heated up. So it was really critical for me to develop that into each one of these products. So yeah.
Very cool.
So yeah, I guess going off John's last question, we only got a couple minutes left. I think Josh, you've already noticed this and spoken to it. Brendan, with some of your yoga customers, do you think the customers notice the aesthetic difference? And I know you have to charge a few cents more or maybe you are getting a few cents more that you have to put into ink, but you can charge a couple dollars more. Do you see that? Do you see your customers see the aesthetic difference and willing to pay for that value?
Certainly, I've definitely watched the owners and the salesmen talk to clients, and they'll tell them about the Kleenex like texture, and look how sharp it is, and this is actually a one hit versus a two. And we do a lot of B2B, business to business clients here, and a lot of those people, sometimes they just start rolling their eyes. They're like, that's my logo on white, or that's my logo in white on black. Good. But like I said before, when you stretch it, when you actually put it to the test in front of them, their eyes just like, what, huh? And it's like giving someone peace of mind. It's really that kind of an effect. They A lot of times people don't trust uh, the print. They'll wash it off, or they'll put it in the dryer. The edges will come out and stuff. Not that that's ever happened here, but in the history of screen printing, right? And a lot of people have, especially if you're in this a fashion industry, you've encountered that over time. And when you can come in here and I could show them the 5 gallon pail hanging from the end of the shirt, that just puts a peace of mind into them, that they're willing to pay the $50, $50, whatever it is, to ensure that that's going to last and it's going to work.
Cool.
So it's
All
an
right.
easy sell.
Cool. All right, guys. I think we're approaching the last minute of our segment, so I just want to take this time to thank you both for coming on board. It's been a pure pleasure to work with you both. You've both been at the kind of the same learning curve, you know, really at the higher end of it, and I really look forward to continuing this learning with silicones and with both of you guys and everybody else out there. Thanks for joining us. You know, we definitely working in a difficult time, so stay safe. Be well. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. See you, John.